I think everybody's in now. So let me do a quick introduction. My name is Scott Knudsen. I'm with Signature Home Inspection. Our company is located in Santa Ana, California. We do cover all of Orange County, portions of LA County, Riverside, San Bernardino, and from time to time, we do find ourselves in San Diego County as well. Was just down there the other day for a commercial inspection and one in, where was it? Carlsbad. So we will from time to time go outside of our normal area, but mostly we are in Orange County, South LA. With that, a little bit about our company. We've been in business for 21 years. We do pretty much every kind of inspection. We're kind of a one-stop shop. So if you need sewer inspections, if you need home inspections, commercial inspections, we can do radon testing, mold testing, pool inspections, pretty much everything you need to know about. So with that, we've been teaching this class for several years now. We teach this at various boards around or associations around the cities. And this is one of my favorite ones because, of course, it deals with home inspection. Also, I get a chance to go over my experience that we've experienced over the years. Doesn't mean that it's going to be my opinion is going to be what everybody else would agree with. But we do close to 120 inspections a month, and we come across this stuff quite a bit. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to put that in chat, or questions and answers. I don't always answer them real time, but I will go back to them. It's a little bit easier to keep this class on track when we do it at the end. So with that said, the class that we're doing today is managing the home inspection. With this class, our goals are to do a few things here. So directing your clients to the best inspectors, equipping the buyer for the home inspection, also advising the seller what the benefit to the seller is, how the seller should prepare, how the seller should be present, or should the seller be present, and then things the inspector will ask for, and then frequently asked questions. So we're going to go through these topics here. This class shouldn't last, usually it comes in under an hour since we've moved this to Zoom. In class takes a little bit longer because there's more interaction, but let's get started here. So get on the right one. So directing your clients to the best inspection. So the first thing is we're going to go over what is a home inspection. So not everybody always knows what is a home inspection. So home inspection that they have laid out here is an objective. Keep that in mind, objective. So you could get multiple inspectors and you're going to get 10 different reports, but it's an objective visual examination of the physical structure and systems of a home from the roof to the foundation. So again, it is visual. Home inspectors are not taking stuff apart. We're not pulling back carpet. We're not going to typically move a bunch of furniture. It's going to be visual. We're not going to cut into walls. We're not going to be pulling back roofing tile. It's going to be visual, take a lot of photos. But that is the definition that most associations have adopted, that home inspectors are associated with. So again, home inspection is an objective visual examination of the physical structure and systems of a home from the roof to the foundation. So I always kind of explain to buyers when we're on site or when we're on the phone with them, because the process typically is that real estate agent will either refer a home inspector or say, here's 3 that we've come across, or we're seeing more and more buyers finding us online where they will see us, see the reviews, or, for example, sometimes, if you're referring 3 inspectors, make sure you vetted them, make sure that their reviews look good online, because you don't want to refer a home inspector that doesn't have any online presence, because your buyers will see that and say, well, why are they referring me to this home inspector that only has 3 reviews versus where I can see other inspectors that have, over 300 reviews, for example. So if you haven't vetted your home inspector for a while online, you might want to do that. But to get back to this, is having a home inspection is like giving a home a physical checkup. So I always tell people it's like I'm kind of like a general practitioner when it comes to a home. We have training on all aspects of the home, but if you want a more specialist as far as for example, podiatrist when it comes to your foot, Same would be with the home inspector. If it's something that is more, that is a bigger, structural concern than what our education, allows us to comment on, we will make that recommendation that, hey, you probably need to have a structural engineer come in here and take a look at this. If you feel like this is an issue like that. So for example, if problems or symptoms are discovered, the inspector may recommend a repair, replacement, or further evaluation by a specialist. Home inspection is not a commodity item. There may be vast differences in knowledge, customer service, and professionalism. So knowledge would be, how long have they been doing inspections? There are a lot of companies out there that will say, hey, we've got 30 years of inspection experience. Well, does that mean every inspector has it or the company has it? It could vary. So depending on, the inspector, especially if you're going with a multi inspector home inspection company, you may have an inspector that's only been inspecting for a year versus somebody that's been inspecting for 21 years, for example. So, as far as our company goes, we've got that range of, we've got some newer inspectors. We don't release them out in the field unless they've been completely trained on our processes and we feel comfortable sending them out. Or you've got somebody like myself that's been doing this for 21 years. So keep that in mind. Knowledge is a big one. Customer service, what's the customer service like? How are they interacting with your clients? Because that does reflect on you as well. When you call the company, are they easy to reach? Do they have chat support? Do they have telephone support? Do they have email support? What type of customer service do they have and how they handle that? So, and then also professionalism. How does the inspector show up? Is he in a uniform? Is he just in, blue jeans and a dirty t-shirt? What does his car look like? Is it clean? Does it look professional? Does it have, the company logos on it? There's a lot of different ways of professionalism, but I would say most of it's going to be how they are interacting with your client. Are they rude? Are they professional? Are they friendly? There's a lot of things that you can look at. So keep that in mind. And I'm sure if you've been doing this long enough, you've probably got your 2 or 3 that you like to refer out. Does that mean if somebody else is trying to get in, that may come to your open house and say, hey, I'm just out, meeting new realtors. You can always give them a chance. We come across that quite a bit where we'll be doing an inspection and we'll meet the listing agent we've never worked with before. They like our professionalism. They like our reports. They like the speed of the reports that we get out. And come find out they start using us later on afterwards, and they've always had another inspector before. So keep that in mind. So important questions to ask your home inspector. And I just realized I didn't get any water, so I might have to step across here and fill up my glass here really quick. But let's go through this quickly here. Has he or she been professionally trained, and if so, where? So when I first started doing inspections, we could not get trained online. We couldn't take, you couldn't do a home study course, where you get the books and then study, send in the tests. There was none of that. So basically when I started, and this is 21 years ago, I actually had to go to a live course, and they did not have them in every city like they do today. Most of the training now, I would say, is online. Very few actually go to an actual course. But when I had to do it, I was actually in Salt Lake City at the time and had to go to Scottsdale, Arizona. I had been looking at this course that was doing some training. I think it was like a 2-week intensive training where we were there in class for 2 weeks. And then there was, real life inspections that we went out on. And I had to make it, to where luckily I had a friend that lived in Scottsdale, so I was able to stay with him. But it really depends on, where were they trained? Do they just do an online course? Do they do an in-person course? Which course did they take? So you can ask those type of questions. Also, how much experience does he or she have? This is kind of where we touched on this earlier. I would, there's a lot of differences out there where somebody will say, we have 30 years of experience. Well, the experience may be just in construction. So you want to clarify, is your experience in being an inspector, or is your experience in being a contractor? There's a big difference. So contractors, know a lot about a house, but they are not trained to do inspections because they, just because they're a contractor doesn't mean they can do an inspection. They might not be able to properly write a report. They may, be a contractor as far as an electrical contractor. So what kind of contractor were they? If they're a contractor, that's a broad range of skill sets that you'd have to find out what type of contractor they were. If they were a contractor that just did framing, are they going to know enough about electrical? When I got in this industry, I'd worked for a company that did a lot of different things, but I didn't know a lot about electrical. So just because I worked for a company that did heating and cooling, plumbing, and framing, I had no idea anything about electrical. So, would I have been able to go out and do inspections just because I was a contractor? No. So also, how many years? We talked about that earlier. How many years have they actually been doing inspections? Are they doing it full time? Are they doing it part time? If they're only doing it after 5 p.m. and on weekends, they probably have a full-time job that they're working. So do you want that type of inspector where you can only get a hold of them after 5 p.m., for example, or can only do inspections after 5 p.m.? How many inspections have they done? So I would say if an inspector is full-time and their schedule is full, they're probably doing between 400 and 450 a year of inspections, and that's on average, 2 a day. But like I said, that's not every single day, because you're going to have weeks where you're going to be probably doing, I would say a full-time home inspector is doing 10 inspections a week. And, but sometimes they may do 15 one week and then maybe 7 another week. So it's not always going to be a consistent amount, but it's, 10 we consider full-time. Is the property inspection their only business? Like I said earlier, there are some inspectors that will only do inspections on certain days, certain times. They may have another job, like they may be a fireman, they may be, have, like I said, a full-time job. So also, do they belong to any professional organizations, and which ones? There are, let's see, I would say in California, there's 3 associations. There's a state association called CREA, and then there's 2 national ones that are ASHI and NACHI. So do they need to be a member of all 3? I would say no. That's kind of overdoing it. We have chosen to become an association member of NACHI, which is a national organization. It's probably the largest one, has the best education that I've seen. Some of the other ones are older associations that I don't want to make it think they just have some older thoughts and processes on how things should go. So it's kind of individual choice, but I would say most of the newer inspectors are not newer, but recent inspectors have decided to go with NACHI. It seems like the one that's growing in popularity the most. Let's see here. I'm going to answer a question here. Do you ever go back for reinspection after repairs are done? To answer that question, we used to. We don't like doing that anymore. And the reason why, I'm going to give you an example. So my recommendation is, and this is something that if we do go back to do reinspection, we do charge to go back and do it because it is time that is not involved. It's not part of the original inspection. And the reason why we don't like to do them is because most of the time when we go back to do a reinspection, the repairs are either not done, or they're not done properly, or they're not done very good. And as inspectors, we don't want to be that last man in and say, yes, this repair was done, and then it breaks down in 6 months. Then guess who they start pointing fingers at? They start pointing fingers at the inspector. So my recommendation is if you're going to request repairs, request that they have it done by a professional, license preferred. If that's the case, if it's a roofing repair, have a licensed roofer do it and have them provide you the receipts that were done. That way you can go back and you say, okay, this was done. Here's a receipt. If there's any future failure on it, we have a receipt, and typically they have warranties on that stuff that's been done. Then you have that done. Otherwise, trying to schedule reinspection and going back and forth on the repairs is going to delay your closing. It's going to take twice or 3 times as long. So that's my recommendation. We actually stopped doing reinspections. So to answer your question, no, we do not go back anymore, unless it's for a client that we were working with quite a bit. Let's see, we can't climb on the roof. Neither can we in most instances. So we would have to have a drone for a lot of that stuff. So, but like I said, if it was done by a licensed professional, they will give you the receipt and they will give you they will say, hey, this has been done. So, anyway. Yeah, that's been a lot of inspectors are going away from that because the cost for us to go back out, it's not going to be cheap. Because of the time and effort that's involved in it. And we have to pay our inspectors to work. So let's see here. All right, let's go back to that. Let's see. And then also, are they required to complete continuing education? So yes, every association that any inspector is a member of does require continuing education. So that's something that's done as well. Is your home inspector insured? So if you you can ask for that information, but in our industry, let's see, in California, you're not required to have errors and omissions insurance. But if they don't have it, they're I don't know what to say. We have a $2 million policy on errors and omissions because a lot of basically errors and omissions covers the legal aspect of it. There's also what's called claims made or per occurrence, and then general liability, which would be, say, for example, we put a ladder up against the house and it's, the wind knocks it over and breaks a window. That's general liability. And then workers' compensation would be for the employees. So yes, we have all this insurance. So there's a good way to determine if if you ask for it and they don't give it to you, or they don't show you proof of it. I would probably steer clear of those inspectors. So there's also, we might get to this later on in the presentation, but there's another good way is that if your home inspector does not require a signed home inspection agreement, that's another indicator that they might not have insurance, because all insurance companies will require a signed home inspection agreement prior to the inspector starting the inspection. So that's another way you can determine that. Home inspection companies, questions asked, have they provided certificates of insurance? What is the structure company? There's a difference between LLC, S Corp, C Corp, or sole proprietor. I ran into somebody the other day that was a sole proprietor, and I couldn't understand why they would put their personal finances at risk like that. Most companies are going to be an LLC, to where if they were to get sued, it would protect their personal stuff. See, are they likely to be around 2 or 3 years from now? And then were they around 2 or 3 years ago? So again, that's all down to experience and the viability of the company, because we still get people that will contact us that we did an inspection 3 years ago, asking if they can have a copy of the report. They will say, we misplaced it, and can you send us another copy? So is that company going to be around? I'm going to pause for a second. I just got to fill up my glass here really quick. Okay, had to get some water. All right. Also, what else to look for in an inspection company? The realtor should look for the same qualities the client is looking for. So one would be ease of scheduling. How easy is it to schedule? Are you able to call and place a schedule? Can you schedule online? Can you schedule via email? Can you schedule via text? There's going to be various different ways that people will want to schedule. I would say most of our top realtors that we work with, they just go on our website and they schedule online, because our website, they can schedule 24/7. They can pick the dates and times, they can put in the address, and they can actually schedule everything right then and there. Some people like to text. I've got clients that will like to send me a text and say, hey, what do you have available and how much and this and that. That takes a little bit longer. I personally wish that they would go online, because it's all right there. I listened to a podcast the other day with an inspector, and he says that he pushes everybody to do it online, that he won't take the order while he's in the field. He asks them to do it online. And in my opinion, that's our real-time schedule. Whatever shows on the website is what's available, and where and so forth. So but ease of scheduling, they should have multiple ways that you can schedule. I know some inspectors that don't schedule, that they don't even have a schedule on their website. In my, let's see, for our company, I would say 50% schedule online. And I see that increasing more and more with the younger generation that likes to do everything online and via chat and so forth. So also longevity, stability. Again, we talked about that earlier. How long they've been around? Are they a stable company? Are they just in it for the quick buck? I know that there's a lot of inspectors that got into the business during COVID, that when the market got hot, and now that the market has the pace has slowed and there's not as many homes for sale, that they have either gone out of business, or they've started to call more established companies like ours and say, hey, do you have any jobs? And it's something that we're just not hiring right now, just because of the way the market's been. So are the reports clear and understandable? Most companies will have their sample report online. There's a lot of bad reports out there. I've seen, or report software, I should say. I've seen some reports where I'll have real estate agents send us over, hey, can you take a look at this and tell me what you think? And I just have a migraine by the time I'm done reading it. It's just not a very easy report to read. There's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't need to be on that front, on the main pages. I feel like the software that we chose several years ago is probably the top in the industry right now. The software we use is Spectora. When we started using them, I think there was probably 10 home inspectors. It was in their very beginning stage. Here, 3 or 4 years later, there's over 8,000 companies that are using it. So I think it's one of the more popular ones out there right now. Easy to read, clear, give straight to the point. So also professional demeanor, we talked about that. How are they communicating the findings? Are they scaring clients versus are they, kind of, being their consultant? Non-alarmist, as I think we say quite a bit. We try to be we don't want to alarm the client. We want to, communicate the findings, get straight to the point, let them know. And then we also give them options on what they can do to either resolve it, or, it might be something that can wait, for example. So, and then also making sure that they have the comprehensive insurance. Let's see here. What inspection format is used? So there were basically 3 formats that are used. You have a checklist. You have so basically where they just go through and say, for example, was the refrigerator working? And typically the checklist would be inspected, non-inspected. What's the other ones? I don't use the checklist anymore. So not present, and then the last one would be an issue, for example. So we use a combination of those depending on which type of inspection we're doing, but ours is mostly a narrative. So basically, when we find the issue in the house, there's going to be a narrative that will say, for example, the outlet in the kitchen, or the GFCI outlet in the kitchen is missing. Recommend electrician install, GFCI. So, so we'll give you, what it is, what the issue is, what can be done, and who typically can do it for you or do it for them. Let's see, items checked. It'll go over what the inspection is going to cover, what items are going to checked and not checked. And then if they're not checked, we're going to just explain why. So for example, if we don't have attic access or crawl space access, we had an instance the other day where there was a skunk in the crawl space. And in that instance, we did have to come back. And like I said, there was, I think the seller ended up paying for the fee because they had to get the skunk out and have us come back because we weren't able to inspect it the first time. On that instance, sometimes we'll go back if it's in our area that we're going to be in. But in this instance, it was a little bit further away. It was up in very difficult area to get into in LA, and it was going to take, several hours to get in and out of there. So there was a reinspection fee on that one. And then let's see, does the report contain items not functioning as designed? So that's typically, it's going to be in the reports as well. We do have sample reports on our website. So our website is signaturemore.com. And then we've got several different types of inspection samples that we've got on there. So if you go to sample report on that main page, there's a button on there. You just hit sample reports. Then that will open up the different types of inspections that we do. And then there's samples on there. So they're actually actual home inspections we've done. We just convert them over to samples. Inspection format continued, the 3Ds. So this is typically how our format is. It's going to be detection, description of each concerned condition, and then description, explanation of the potential ramifications of that issue, and then direction for resolution. So again, like I said earlier, we're going to detect description of each concern. We're going to explain what the potential ramifications are, and then direction for resolution. Delivery report. How will the report be delivered? Will they snail mail it to you? Will they fax it? Will they email it? Most reports today are going to be emailed. I remember when I started 21 years ago, we used to have the paper copies. There was no photos involved. There was none of this. It was basically, we would purchase these books. They were $12. And they were like a workbook, and we would go through each item in the book, and then we would write down, and then there was carbon copies in it. And so each carbon copy, there would be, the white one would go to the client, pink one would go to the agent, and then we would keep the yellow copy. So that's how it was when I first started. Computer programs started to come in about then. And then photos and all that stuff later on. But those were the days back then. So, and back then, if they needed it right away, or for example, they couldn't make the report, we would, we would fax that to them if they couldn't make the inspection, or actually mail it to them. So could you imagine how long it used to take before? Now it's like, if you're not getting the report out same day, you're considered a dinosaur. So with us, we typically have the report out same day, unless it's one of these inspections where we're there until 8 o'clock at night and still need to do some cleaning up to do. So then from there, we'll typically, we tell people it'll be out within 24 hours. So, but most of our reports go out same day. And we do deliver email. So we basically will email a link, and when you click on the link, then you have access to the report. So will the inspector be readily accessible for questions about the property or the report after the inspection? We typically recommend that the buyers try to be there at the end of the inspection so we can answer any questions that they have. But if they do have questions afterwards, yes, we do have times that we can set up where they can go over those questions. My recommendation is that because we are out in the field during the day, if you or your client call and expect immediate talk to the inspector right away, it's not always going to happen, because the inspector is with other clients. He'll probably either have to call back or set up a time, because sometimes when people have questions, it's going to be a week later. If we're doing, inspections every day, you generally have to have the report in front of us to answer those questions, because these houses, they blend together really quickly. I did an inspection, one from last Monday, that I probably don't even remember. I'd probably remember the house and the people that were there, but I'd have to go back in and look at the report to answer any questions. So sometimes we just, if it's just a quick question, just email it in. And then my title is technically operations manager. I can usually answer it pretty quickly without even having to involve the inspector, because I can just go into the report, take a look at it, look at the photo, and then respond back from there. So let's see here. Cost of inspection. What is the approximate cost of inspection? So this is going to be vary. I mean, you can have bigger companies that have 40 to 60 inspectors that are just cranking out inspections as fast as they can. Their prices might be lower because they're trying to keep their inspectors busy. Or if you hire a smaller company, or even a single man guy, his prices may be higher because he's pricing it based off of his experience and his expertise. And that's what he feels his value is. So I would say in our market, it's gonna, and it really depends on square footage. So I would say on average between, I mean, it's gone up because of inflation and cost of everything. I would say between 350 and 750 on average. Um, so really depends. There's going to be variances there. So let's see here. Not inspectors are created equal. So usually the guys on the lower end might be newer, or like I said, larger companies that are just cranking out inspections as fast as they can. Because they want to do quantity. I don't want to say quantity over quality, but they do quantity again because they're trying to keep everybody busy that's on staff, and they sometimes will lower their prices to do that. So is cheaper better? I would say, in my experience, if you're going to call around, call, just like any other contractor, call free. Go with the middle price guy if you're going to go based on price. But this is the way I look at it is if you're buying furniture, you can buy it at IKEA. There's some, and I have some stuff that are IKEA, or you can buy Restoration Hardware. In my opinion, I've got a mix of both. I've got both. Restoration Hardware is just a better quality product. When I move, whenever you move, it's not going to fall apart like IKEA furniture does. IKEA furniture, typically, once you put it together, if you have to move it, it just starts to fall apart. So is cheaper always better? I don't think so. I know that I just barely repainted and refloored my house, and I got 3 bids, and I went with the guy that had the good reviews and the more established online presence, and he was about in the middle. He wasn't the high one, he wasn't the low one. I definitely wouldn't be hiring the cheapest inspector that you can find. That's not something that if you feel like, hey, I can save $25 by going with this cheaper guy, I wouldn't probably go that route. And kind of the same in the industry, if you're going with a company that, is offer, is doing a 1% listing, um, you know, versus a 3%, like I said, to me, I usually will pay more for better quality. Equipping the buyer for the home inspection. So setting the expectation, I would say out of everything that you guys can do to manage the home inspection is to prepare the buyer for the process. If you have never done an inspection, feel free to reach out to us and we can probably arrange a time where you can come out with us and see an inspection. The challenging part of that is that we would have to get clearance from everybody that's at the inspection to, let you tag along. Some agents aren't, they don't care for that type of thing. So usually it's going to be a house that it might be vacant. But if you want to come out and do an inspection or see an inspection process, you can do that. But I would say the key is set the expectation for the buyer. So first thing that's going to be needed is an inspection agreement. So the way our system is that when somebody places an order or we enter the order online, we have a system that's all automated. So basically, once we put the client's details in, the realtor's details in, and the property details in, then what happens is it will kick out a confirmation email. And in that confirmation email, it will send them the link to the inspection agreement that they can sign online. It's like DocuSign. They don't have to print it out. All they have to do is click on the link, read through the agreement, initial, sign, boom, it's done. Can all be done quickly. And then they also have access to pay if they want to pay online, if they want to pay via ACH, if they want to pay check or cash on site, they have all those options. Also, standards of practice. Every home inspector typically follows the standards of practice. This is basically a document that states this is what we are going to inspect. This is what we're going to do. This is how much, this is, everything that the inspector is going to do on site. That's the standards of practice. That also has the scope of the inspection. Typically during what we call the driveway speech, when we show up at the inspection, meet the client, meet the realtor, we're going to go over what the scope of the inspection is. So we typically will explain to them what we're going to be doing. And you can also do that as well. So as a real estate agent, I would go through that and let them know, because I would say the biggest thing that we see a lot of times is that the buyers are clueless on what's going on. They don't know, they don't understand what the inspector is going to do. They think the inspector is going to come in and check for mold and sewer for that one price. They think we're going to do termite inspections. There's a lot of buyers that are not familiar with the process. So and we get that sometimes when they call too. We'll get somebody that says, hey, I need a termite inspection, not realizing that most home inspectors don't do termite inspections. And if they do, they typically have it contracted with another company. So and then also what's going to be inspected? Are the outbuildings, pools, spas, in-law quarters to be inspected? What are the costs? The way we have it set up is when they go into a sign our agreement in the system, it will show them the additional inspections that we offer. So if they want to add those on, they can do that right then and there. So say, for example, they only ordered a home inspection, but then they realized, hey, I need to have my pool inspected too. They can add that on right then and there. If they need to add sewer, if they need to add mold, they can do all that right there. So and then most companies are going to charge extra. Well, I don't know anybody that does free sewer scopes with inspections unless they're running some kind of promotion. But usually if they're doing that, they're probably looking to do the repairs as well. So kind of keep that in mind. I would say our most common request is going to be, next to the home inspection would be either sewer or mold are going to be the bigger ones that we're doing. So, and that can all be done during the inspection. So, let's see here. Are the sellers or their agent allowed to be present at the inspection? So it is their house. So yes, they can be there. Is it recommended? No. And the reason why is because buyers don't feel comfortable typically with the sellers and the seller's agent there. They want to be able to come into that. And this is, again, my personal experience, my personal opinion. Buyers want to come in and open drawers. They want to get a feel for the house. They want to go into the bathroom. They want to, they're not being nosy. They're not, they just want to be able to feel the house. And if they've got the seller there, and the seller's agent, they don't feel as comfortable as if it's just the buyer. So in my opinion, I think the only people that should be at the buyer's home inspection is the buyer's agent, the home inspector, and the buyers. Anybody else is going to be a distraction, and it's going to make the process go a lot longer. Also, you get a lot of father-in-laws that worked at Home Depot for 20 years that comes in and they put doubt in the buyer's mind. So if you want the process to go smooth, I would limit the amount of people that are at the inspection so it can go smoothly and you don't have a lot of outside influences coming in and interfering with everything. So there are just going to be times where sellers just won't leave the house. And then usually the seller's agent will come at the end so they can hear the final, the summary at the end. But I think in general, sellers typically should not be there because they sometimes will sugarcoat. Sometimes sometimes they're just sit in the room and watch TV, so it just really depends. But most of the time sellers are going to leave. So, but that's going to be all up to, you guys. So it doesn't matter up to us either way. If it's only the sellers and the buyer's agent can't make it, we're not going to really disclose anything on site because it's not really fair to the buyer and the buyer's agent for the seller to get the information first. So, we typically will, not disclose too much if they're not there. And that's just answering questions on website chat there. So down here. All right. What if the inspector finds problems or concerns? Well, they probably will expect it. The perfect house does not exist. So most inspectors will find concerns in any house, new or old, large or small, from the bottom of the market to the top of the market. So there's nothing that can't be either fixed or replaced. So that's kind of something I say, just because it's there doesn't mean it can't be fixed, doesn't mean it can't be changed. It's just going to be how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost to add an addition, for example, or we get the people say, can I remove this wall? Is this load bearing? It's like, well, you can do anything you want. It just depends on how much it's going to cost. So anything can be fixed or replaced. And that's the thing is what I what I would say, and this is just me, what I would say is I would kind of explain the process. I would say, hey, listen, we're going to go do it. We're going to go do an inspection. The home inspector is going to find things. My recommendation is that we wait until, we'll go through the review. We'll go through the summary. Don't freak out. Let's get, once we get the report, we'll meet up, we'll go through it together, and then we'll devise a plan of how they're gonna, either ask for repairs or ask for credit, what they're gonna do after they get the report. So that would be, my recommendation is, go over it with the buyer, say, okay, this is what's gonna happen during the inspection. And if you make that clear to them, then it makes the process go a lot easier and they don't freak out as much after they go through it. Because when an inspector is doing his findings, he'll probably go over some of the positives of the house, but we're there to find the issues. We're there to, we're not, they've already found the positives because they like the house, they put an offer on it. Unfortunately, the inspector comes in and he's going to come in and they're going to point out, we're not there to say, hey, this is great, this is this. We're there to say, okay, this is, something that you'd probably want to fix. This is something that needs to be repaired. This is something that, in 5 years may need to be replaced. That's what we're there for. So, and that's what we're putting the report together. So if you explain that process, set the expectations, it makes the process go a lot easier. And hence the term buyer freakout syndrome. If the buyer chooses to move on, they will find another house with concerns they can live with, and somebody else will buy their first house. It is all a matter of particular buyer's level of comfort. This goes back to my first experience buying a house. My first experience, I was under contract on a 1907 house. It was an older house. I loved it. I had all kinds of plans for it. It was in a great neighborhood that I wanted to be in. But when I had the inspector come in, there was some concerns down in the basement. There was some cracking. There was some evidence of past water, seepage coming in. And sure enough, 2 days before my inspection deadline, it rained. So I went over there. It was a vacant house, bank owned. Looked inside the windows in the basement, and there was flooding going on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Went back to the bank and said, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. I had a friend that had a landscaping company that could do a lot of the work. And he came back with a number and said, this is what it's going to take. And they said no. So what happened? I backed out. And then come to find out, I found a house that I liked better, had a pool, it wasn't in the exact neighborhood I wanted, but ended up being a bigger house, a newer house. Had a pool, had a bigger yard, was in I would say it was probably in a better neighborhood, just not the one I wanted to be in, but I was happier with it. So just because that first one doesn't go through doesn't mean that they won't find another one. So, and then it says also inspectors do not kill deals. Conditions, people, buyers and sellers, they're the ones that kill the deals. So we're there to report the facts. Of course, if you get an inspector that comes in and just is the negative Nancy that just says, this is crap, this has to be tore out, blah, blah, blah. That's not a very good inspector. He is more of an alarmist and probably not somebody that you can refer business to. So, kind of keep that in mind. So inspectors don't kill deals. It's typically the house that does it. Set realistic expectations in the beginning to avoid buyer freakout. This is kind of what we talked about earlier. Set those expectations, you'll be other way. Let's see, is there a way of checking pipes inside the walls? Can you clarify that? This is on the Q&A. So again, this is visual. Inspections are visual. So there are, if you're checking for leaks, some home inspectors have infrared that we can utilize, but again, infrared's not 100%. But if there is leaks in the walls or ceilings and they have infrared, they can detect that. But again, it is visual. A leak may not be there during the inspection, but could show up 2 or 3 weeks later. So it's really difficult. Again, the inspection is for that day. But if they have, we carry infrared. And so if there are any leaks or any missing insulation and stuff like that, we can typically see it if they're active. Let's see here. Is it recording? Yes, it is. All right. Let's see, let's go on to the next one. So like I was saying earlier, set that realistic expectations, and that helps avoid the buyer freak out. Attending the inspections. Should the buyer attend the inspection? One-on-one communication between the client and the inspector is highly desirable. It's a lot easier to explain it on site versus just sending them the report and them reading it, because when they read it, it looks a lot worse than what it is. So our recommendation is they don't need to be there the whole 2 to 3 hours, but they could come during the last hour, last half hour, because that's when we're going to do our review and go over everything. So that's my recommendation. Otherwise, you're going to be there as the buyer's agent, babysitting them. I don't want to say babysitting them, but there for the whole 3 hours. And most of the time, everybody's sitting there looking at their phones and really not doing much. So some real estate agents will take that opportunity to wrap up some paperwork that they might need to wrap up and go over some stuff. Sometimes buyers will bring contractors in that they want to bring in to do measurements on, how much to replace the floor and so forth. So sometimes that happens. So it just really depends on what's going on. Does the client need to be present for the home inspection? That really depends on the inspector. They can be there, they're paying for it. They're doing the inspection. But most inspectors will want to focus on what they're trying to do as far as inspecting. And sometimes if a buyer is following them or asking questions along the way, it does take a lot longer, and it does do a little, I get distracted really easy. If I'm going into a kitchen, I'm talkative. So it might take me twice as long to inspect the kitchen, for example, because I'm going to be talking to them. So who should the buyer bring the inspection? Buyers may desire to bring other third-party opinions, and inspections will respect that. However, too many guests may distract the inspector and the client. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend bringing both in-laws on both sides. It's a big distraction. As a realtor, I would say, hey, if you want to show your family and friends, let's set up another showing for that. Because during the inspection, I've seen it so many times where the father-in-law or somebody else puts in a negative, opinion, and then they start to doubt the purchase. And like I said, that's my experience. You might have something else, but I would limit on who's going to be at that inspection. So let's see. Let's distract now. Go into here. Answering your client's questions. So even the best inspectors do not know everything, and a good one will admit it. There are times I still see stuff sometimes that I haven't seen before. So but I've also seen a lot of stuff. So when I do come across something that I haven't seen before, listen, I won't make anything up. I'm going to say, listen, I haven't seen that before. Let me do some research. Let me get back to you. Let me reach out to other inspectors with some photos and see if they've seen this before, because there are times where I haven't seen a particular alarm set up. For example, there might be something on the wall that, it looks like a doorbell, but it ain't a doorbell, stuff like that, that might be older that we're not familiar with. So, most of our inspections we do nowadays are in Orange County. So there's not too many homes that are going to be built before 1900 in Orange County. Versus if you were, inspecting up in LA where you've got older homes in some of those areas. So, typical what we've got Facebook groups that we can go on and post a picture, and boom, within minutes, we'll have probably 20 comments of what they've experienced and what they've seen. So inspectors should be able to point the client in the right direction to solve any mysteries. So they should have a good idea of who to send them to, so they can say, hey, yes, you need a pest control to look at this, or the electrician or a handyman should be able to handle this for you. Or you could do it yourself. We've got some windows that are they're single hung windows, and they've got this metal bracket that pops out of the wall sometimes. And it got to the point where we were getting so many questions about that I finally found a YouTube video, and I provided a link on there so they could actually watch the video and do it themselves, repair it themselves, because it's so common that it happens, and it's just random. So it doesn't mean the window has to be replaced. No, it's just the way that the window was designed. It just needs to be popped back in. So and then good inspectors provide solutions, or at least a path to those solutions. So they shouldn't just say, yeah, it needs to be repaired. I don't know who to send you to, I don't know who does it. So, somebody the other day was on a home inspection forum, and this goes back to new versus experienced inspectors. This guy had never seen, you know how you do on the TV, where you pull the cables through, and some of them have like this little filament on it. I don't know what they call the filament, but basically keeps it from being scratched up. He didn't know what that was. He'd never seen it before. And I'm like, anybody that's ever been in houses should know what that is, or even been in Home Depot should know what that was. He had no idea. And it was one of these pages called Home Inspectors Helping Home Inspectors. And so you can't really be negative about that. You can't really mean, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't know that. But here I am thinking, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine hiring this guy to do my inspection if he doesn't even know what that is. So like I said, be careful out there. Make sure you're finding an inspector that, you know, if they're cheap, you know, find out how long they've been doing inspections. Let's see, inspectors should, because it's just like any other industry, you know, you have a good market and then you start having everybody get into the market that don't really have any business being into it because they're trying to make a quick buck. Let's see through here. Do you check city permits for all remodeling work? No, that's not a home inspector's job to do that. That would be a building inspector. Are the sellers or their agent allowed to see that one? So yeah, we're not checking city permits. That would be more on the realtor side to find out who does that. But yeah, home inspectors don't do that. Let's see here. That's not our forte. Let's see, checking. All right, I'm just checking questions and answers before I go back through here. This buyer advice. So explain to the buyer their options for dealing with conditions that an inspector may discover. Advise the buyer who's responsible for any property damage caused during the home inspection. So again, just, you know, prepare them for the inspection. You know, property damage. There are some instances where an inspector is testing something and it fails under normal use. We're still going to write that up because, say, for example, a GFCI is on, it's working, but when we come and test it, and basically we push a button on the tester and it's supposed to pop the GFCI. Well, sometimes the GFCI won't reset. And when it won't reset, it failed the test because that's meant to pop off and then you should be able to push the button and reset it. If it doesn't reset, the GFCI needs to be replaced. It didn't work as intended. So, you know, sometimes people think, well, it was working when you were there. Yes, but when we tested it, it failed. It didn't reset like it was supposed to. So that's kind of one of those things where you just have to, you know, clarify what's, you know, what's actually property damage versus failing a test during the inspection. Let's see, that would be like, you know, we don't do this, but for example, if a home inspector were to go up and, you know, start pouring water on the roof and it starts to leak inside the house, well, is the home inspector, you know, did he do that damage? No, he was just testing the, you know, the roof to see if it leaked. Well, it leaked. Well, then we put it in the report that, hey, it leaks. So I'm just kind of giving an example on that for the roof, but you're not going to see any inspectors up on a roof with a hose, you know, trying to cause the roof to leak, but just kind of an example. We do get asked that though. People will say, do you go up there with a hose and, you know, check for leaks? And it's like, it's that would take a while. So it'd probably take a couple hours just to do that. And that's not what a home inspector is there for. Let's see here. I'm just kind of going through these questions again, make sure I got them all. Let's see. Buyer advice continues. Should the seller have immediate access to the inspection report? The owner of the report has some discretion as to who gets the report and what and when. So you have to keep in mind that even though as a real estate agent, you may have referred us, but the client is actually the buyer. They're the ones that pay us. They're the ones that sign the agreement. And we've actually had buyers tell us, they say, I do not want anybody to see this report. I don't want the agent to have it. I don't want anybody to see it. If they tell us that, we have to go by that. We have to abide by that. If you want to get a copy of it, if they do that, then you have to work that out with them. But I can't, you know, in our inspection agreement, it states that we have to have their approval to send it off to people. So we typically have it set up to where it defaults to where we send it to the agents. But there have been times where the buyer says, I do not want them on the communication. Don't ask me why. Some buyers just don't trust anybody. Some will say, I don't want the seller's agent to see it. You know, you guys would have to work that out, but what we will do in that instance, we will send it to the buyer and then let him decide who he wants to send it to. So keep that in mind. You know, they're the buyers are the client. If you want to, you know, if somebody else wants a copy of it, say for example, the buyer doesn't backs out. Sometimes we get calls from sellers agents saying, "Hey," or we get calls from buyers that use the report that was for somebody else, and then wants us to come back out, and they start asking us questions. It's like we can't typically ask questions, you know, or answer questions from somebody that's not on that report. So if you're a listing agent, then you need clarification for something. I usually recommend that you go to the buyer's agent for that, because we're not able to discuss it with the listing agent unless the buyer gives us consent to do that. So again, it's just one of these things that because they're our client, we have to go by with what they say. Let me sure if I went past that. The owner report. All right, so buyer advice: continued advise the buyer on the time span of the inspection. Check with the inspector if you're insured. Typically, a home inspection takes 1 hour. I need to change that. I keep forgetting 1 hour per 1,000 square feet, give or take. Does that mean a 4,000 square foot house is going to take 4 hours? Not necessarily. It just really depends on how big the rooms are or how small they are. If there's multiple, you know, a 4,000 square foot house could be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, you know, and they would be a lot bigger, you know, for example. But if they've got, you know, 10 bedrooms, you know, and 10 bathrooms in a 4,000 square foot house, it's going to take a little bit longer. So really depends. Explain to the buyer that the summarization of the inspection report during the last half hour of the inspection process is very important, that they should be present if possible. Also make arrangements for the inspection fee payment if the agent is sole contact before the inspection. So we get some clients that this is probably not so much anymore because it's so easy to pay online now, that usually that's not an issue if they're not able to be at the inspection. We don't take mail checks anymore just because of how long it takes, because we won't release the report until we've got payment on site, you know, payment entered. Our system sets it up to where it won't open the report unless we have the inspection agreement and the payment. So mailing the payment just delays that process. So we just stopped accepting mailed payments, because we do have an ACH payment where they can just go in, you know, put in their bank account details, and then it just transfers the money that way. So they can credit card, check, cash, ACH. There's really no need to mail in checks anymore. Let's see here. Things the inspector will ask for, again, contact information. So this is during the order. You'd be surprised how many people we get that will, you know, call in to order an inspection. Sorry, I'm going just a little bit over. Order an inspection and not have the property address. So typically we need contact information and the property details. We need a signed home inspection agreement prior to the inspection, and then instructions regarding who the report can be released to and when. Payment, and again, I'm going to update this as soon as we get off. Check, cash check, credit card. We no longer do escrow. That is just a nightmare to deal with. So we don't do escrow payments anymore. Access to the property. Are the utilities on? Have the pets been removed? Also, when you know, the responsibility of the seller, you know, respect the property, do no damage, leave the property as we found it. We typically will try to do our best to leave it as we found it. If the doors and windows were open, we typically will leave them open. If they were locked and the lights were on, we'll leave them on. You know, we try to leave it as we find it. Reset the, you know, put the thermostat back to where it needs to be, and so forth. How the seller should prepare: make sure the utilities are on, make sure all the pilots are lit. There, you know, make sure we have access everywhere we need. So main access, attic, crawl space, and utility, like, you know, furnace, water heater. We need to have access to all this stuff so we can properly inspect it. If they can't be inspected, home inspectors are going to make it, they're going to make a note on the report. And if you want us to come back, then, you know, it's going to be based off schedule availability. And, you know, there's usually going to be a return trip fee that's going to be involved. Property access: seller should advise inspector, buyer, or agent of any items that should not be disturbed or entered. Again, if we get to a house and somebody's sleeping in a bedroom, especially if it's a girl or kids, we're not going to go into that room unless we get them out of there first. It's just a liability that we don't want to take on. We don't want to be sued. We don't, it's just, you know, it's best that everybody's out of the house. Seller and buyer should agree before the inspection how to handle these matters. Prepare the property again, attics, crawl spaces, electrical panels, closets, garage, gates, yards, furnaces, water heaters. Remove animal from the premises if possible. Inspectors can assume that they're friendly and doors and windows are open and animals may escape. I've never, I've always, we get there, sometimes we'll say, hey, Fluffy likes to get out, or Fluffy is an escape artist. Can you make sure you close the door behind you? Well, I can do that, but I can't control what everybody else does. So sometimes that happens. It's best that if you don't want your animals to get out, that they should, either cage them or remove them. Let's see. I'm going to go through some of these. This is more on the seller side. If you guys want a copy of this presentation, I think you can request that and I can get that over to you. What are potential ramifications of the inspector's findings? So conditions are disclosed. Some findings may be negotiated between the buyer and seller. Some conditions may be corrected, may depend on what the seller and buyer have agreed to in their purchase agreement. So sometimes we don't know what the purchase agreement says. So we're just there to provide our findings. How does the home inspection benefit the seller? So a lot of times with the seller inspection, now this is not a buyer, this is a seller actually doing it when they list the property. The benefit of that, it eliminates surprises later, may prevent the seller from downplaying significant conditions and good risk management. So this typically when a seller does an inspection, is that helps prepare them for, hey, what needs to be repaired, what the seller may ask for, or you can say, hey, we've done a seller's inspection and we're not going to fix any of this. So, make your offer contingent based on that, what we've explained to you. Pre-listing inspection, again, allows seller time to shop for reasonable cost of repair. It allows the seller to replace broken items with less expensive components. I've seen new light fixtures that I know, aren't as expensive as what was probably there before, for example. Can shorten time needed between contract acceptance and closing. Increases chances of being able to sell as is and increase prospective buyer confidence and shorten time. Should the seller be present? This is answering that question earlier. From the inspector's perspective, it doesn't really matter, but there may be risks. The seller may be offended by the comments made about the home. The seller may attempt to downplay observed conditions and increase his potential for a lawsuit. Seller can slow the inspection by tagging along or making repairs during the inspection. I've had that happen where the seller is right behind me and he's trying to repair things as I'm going through the house. It's not ideal. Really slow process that way. Seller can make it difficult for the inspector to speak with the buyer confidentially, thus slowing the inspection. If we ever have that instance where we're having a difficult seller, I'll usually communicate to the buyer and the buyers, or the buyer's agent and the buyer, say, hey, do you want to go to Starbucks and grab a coffee and we can discuss it there? So it happens. It's sometimes sellers can make it very uncomfortable. The inspector may have questions for the seller. Sometimes we like when usually they're there in the beginning before they leave. But I'll ask them any questions they may have. I may say, hey, what's the history of the dwelling? Have you recently done any repairs? How old's the roof? How old's your water heater? Sometimes that will help me do my job better. And then frequently asked questions. So what about repairs? Most inspectors do not prescribe how something should be repaired, but rather what the end result should be. Repairs vary widely in quality and price, and oftentimes one bears no relation to the other. There may be several different acceptable repair methods that may vary widely in cost. And a home inspector in California should not be doing repairs. That is there's a few laws on the books, and that's one of them. If we do an inspection, or if you get an inspector that does an inspection and he says, hey, I can repair that for you, they're not supposed to be doing that. They should be reported on that one. So the law is that if an inspector does an inspection, they are not able to do any type of work on the property for up to 1 year. Is home inspection a guarantee? No. However, a home inspector overlooks something per the standards of practice. He should be willing to be able to satisfy the client. And we're going to go through this one stuff. Let's see. Why are home inspectors so picky? Why aren't they? Will a home inspector recommend whether or not to purchase a property? No. Individual tastes, values, and abilities may vary. What may be an easy fix for one person may be impossible for another. So there's people that would know how to replace an outlet, and then some it would be impossible for them to do. So you have to keep that in mind. Everybody has their own ability. So if you guys have any questions, let me go through here. Holding another class next week. Let's see. Yep, we got one on safety procedures next week, and then avoiding the aggravations of the home inspection. Let me go to Q&A. Do you normally put the age of the furnace, water heater, condenser, etc.? We will put a range on there. So typically, this is how we were always trained, was to do a range. So 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, because it's not always clear on the appliance what the age is. And so sometimes we have to estimate. So there's no one book out there. There's no standard that says, hey, this brand of water heater and this age, it doesn't, and some of them don't have it. Some of them are, it's clear, some of them don't. So we typically will, sometimes we'll have to do an age related. Some water heater companies, it's just, there's just no standardized app out there that says, hey, plug in this serial number and that'll give you the exact age. So, but yeah, we typically will estimate how old they are and put that in the report. Roofs are difficult to do sometimes, so we'll put an estimate on that as well, unless the seller says, hey, I replaced it in 2001 and can provide documentation. So, all right, well, here's my information. If you guys have any questions, sorry for rushing that very end. I wanted to kind of get you guys out of here so you didn't have to stay too much longer. We're just kind of 9 minutes over here. So if you guys have any questions, you can reach me at 888-860-2688. Website, signaturemore.com. My email is scott@signaturemore.com. Again, our website has a lot of information on there. So we do have trusted contractors in there in our report. Highly recommend taking a look at our sample report. I need to get one with our new recommended contractors at the end, because we get that question a lot. Like, do you have anybody that can do the electrical work? And so what we've done is we've try to find the 2 or 3 contractors for each thing. So that way, if you guys have questions, you can contact them on that stuff. So let's see, one more chat, anything there? Thanks there. And then any more questions? I think that's it. So everybody, thank you for your time today on Monday. Have a great rest of your week. And hopefully we'll see you guys on the next class.